torso is the largest portion of the body and therefore the heaviest. The shape of its structure will allow it to support the head and lower limbs in the movement of the march, allowing to maintain the posture. The pelvis and torso move laterally to the side of the buttock to concentrating on the hip, and this stabilizes the movement throughout the action of the gluteus medius. During the oscillation phase, the hip joint of the opposite leg acts like a fulcrum or support for the rotation. When the impact of the heel occurs, the greatest effect on it is on the tibialis anterior, which attracts the dorsum of the foot upwards, thus allowing the heel calcaneus to be the first to come into contact with the ground. The common extension of the fingers with the extensor proper of the great toe help to attract the foot in dorsiflexion. When the foot is fully flat on the flat surface, the dorsiflexor of the foot, tibialis anterior, common extension of the finger, and extensor proper of the great toe allow the foot to move into plantar flexion through the eccentric leg lengthening extrinsic contraction. After that, the quadriceps contract so that the knee remains stable. Here, the weight is on the hip, and the gluteus medius is in charge of allowing abduction. So that later, the metaphalangeal joint of the big toe takes care that the impulse after the foot rests on the ground happens and hyperextension is performed. The gastrocnemius, soleus, and plantaris muscle of the knee are vital for the impulse, raising the calcaneus from its posterior part, and in this way being supported only on the head of the metatarsal, generating impulse. At this time, the muscular work in the upper limb can be used to balance with the torsional movement of the upper torso. This pendulum movement is synchronized with the torso, hips, and legs. The movement of the arms should be relaxed and parallel to the torso. Kicking. Once march continuity is stabilized, the player has one supported leg while the other will keep it behind the torso in order to gain more momentum and strength when kicking the ball. In the hip joint of the supported leg, the greatest work is done by the gluteus medius, which we already talked about, where most of the weight will rest when kicking. The supported leg keeps fully extended, where the quadriceps femoris and rectus femoris work in conjunction with the hip flexion to stabilize the position of the leg. When the player kicks the ball, he leans on the heel to have more stability, as we see in the picture here, and the foot in dorsal flexion, putting the tibialis anterior flexor of the fingers to work. Also, the back muscles of the leg will perform an isometric contraction to add the stability of the movement. Now, to analyze the leg when the kick is carried out, it is necessary to understand that it is in extension, so the gluteus maximus allows movement. And with the help of the hamstring, it is flexed on the hip. The foot that belongs to the kicking leg is plantar flexion, which tells us that the greatest work is in the back. The muscles on the front of the thigh quadriceps work in conjunction with the hip extensors. The sartorius, pectineus, and tertium fasciae latae, together with the gluteus medius, will help maintain hip abduction, as we see here in the picture. The objective of the project is to identify and recognize the techniques in kicking the ball between men and women. The free kick of the ball is used in soccer, as we said in the beginning, which is why the study and analyze are so important to understand. To accomplish our objective, different videos of different people were analyzed from which the linear and angular velocities were obtained at the moment of the kick on the ball, as well as the angles in the different joints involved to later make the comparison. Our methodology here. The biomechanics on the football kicking is important when it comes to monitor the progress on the training, but it is just one of the many reasons why the biomechanics in this section is important. Studies in the biomechanics seek to establish optimal variables, or variables that are most predictive of success, which is most typically defined by the resulting ball velocity. The in-step soccer plays kick is one of the most analyzed kicking action in soccer. To make all the analysis possible, we chose for women and for men, we asked them to kick a ball for us while they were being recorded, and later we used those videos in 3 different softwares. The parameters to film the videos were 2.8 meters from the subject and 1 meter from the floor. The already mentioned videos were recorded in 2 ways. In the first one, the person who was recording stood behind the subject, and in the second one, the person was next to the subject to obtain a lateral view of the kick. We use skill spectre, Richmond, and Kinovia to analyze the videos. We put marks on the hip, knee, and ankle joints so we could calculate the force applied on the ball. To help us with the calculation, the equation given by the trajectories of the marked points were analyzed in Excel. In Richmond, the markers were made every 5 frames for hip, knee, and ankle joints. For the lateral videos, after putting markers, the data were copied in Excel. When we obtained the data, the next thing was the calculation would help us with the equation or graphic that were made first, and from then the polynomial equation was found to be able to make the following calculations, which were the angular velocity and acceleration. Here are the samples of the graphic obtained. The one in the left are from the data and the men, and the right ones are from the women. The next software used was Skill Spectre and Kinovia, a very easy and Skill Spectre is a very easy and helpful software that helps us a lot in this project because markings had to be made at each point to be analyzed, but here markings were made in every frame of the second. After all the markers were in the correct place, we obtained the animation as we can see here. In the bottom, there is an image from Kinovia that shows the angles from the body of our subject, what made while kicking the ball. As we see here, the result from Skill Spectre are these graphics. We have the result of the women, that are these ones, and here are the results of the men. The next thing we obtained from Kinovia were the angles. Here are the pictures from female angle, and this one are for men angles. All of the research led us to conclude that a soccer player needs to know how to kick, needs to know the biomechanics in it to get a better result. If you practice, you do better, as we saw with the men results, because they practice it and they understand that the supported leg has to be placed to one side of the ball. Then the tip of the foot has to be facing the target and to finish. The hand on the side of the supporting foot has to be raised to get balance. And in conclusion, as we said, soccer is a very popular sport around the world. Many of the times the result depends on the free kick, and that is why the movement is usually analyzed. The study was carried out to compare the difference between men and women, from which difference arose mainly in the force applied to the ball, a situation derived from the technique. An important question is the angle applied in the movement that is carried out helps the correct transfer of the energy for the impact. In the case of men, it is observed with the angles performing the hips are smaller than in women. Another consideration is the blow that is generated. In some cases it occurs with the inside of the foot, and in others with the instep. All these aspects are important so that coaches know what skills to improve, what muscles to train, and what are the best hitting techniques according to the capabilities of each player. And thanks for watching.